Welcome to Build Out with Jim Kunkel, your go-to broadcast for learning more about business in the real world. Your host, Jim Kunkel, who's an accomplished professional in business development, sales, and marketing, and is a technical content creator along with being a rising influencer on LinkedIn. On Build Out, you'll get the latest information and knowledge from subject matter experts from across the globe. Okay, let's get this Build Out broadcast started. And here's your host, Jim Kunkel.
Welcome to Build Out. I'm Jim Kunkel. Very excited to have a great guest. I've had on before in my broadcast, Jacob Adams from Shepherd. Jacob, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. I'm happy to be here. Excited to be joined with everyone today. Interested to talk about sponsorships.
Excellent, excellent. Before we go ahead and get into our conversation about sponsorship ideas for in-person, hybrid, and virtual events, could you provide a professional background on yourself and also talk about Shepherd as well?
Sure. So, as Jim mentioned, I'm Jacob Adams. I have been an event professional and association professional for a little over a decade now. Just switched over from the event planner side of things to Shepherd Exposition Services. We are a full service event production company servicing exhibitors and events and all sorts of different trade shows for everything from corporate and association events to also public events that some of you might think of in the sense of auto shows or jewelry shows or other types of activities. We really provide all aspects for conventions and trade shows. So it's been really great to be able to merge my planner experience and background and expertise with now on the contractor side of things to deliver successful events for our clients and their attendees.
Very good. In the previous last week's episode talked about first impressions, the importance of first impressions. When I think of sponsorships, I really do think of impressions. And a lot of times people ask, what's the value of being a sponsor? And it comes down to a lot of times with branding, also awareness. And also, too, when you have competition, it's a great way for you to show a little bit of leadership by sponsoring an industry event. You know, what are some of the value reasons why a company or an organization or any type of entity would want to become a sponsor for any type of conference or event?
Absolutely. Well, I think, sponsorship should be intentional. I think, some people, when they hear the term sponsorship, they might get a little turned off or just think it's strictly about money. But really, sponsorships can provide value and add to the ROI for an organization that's looking to, whether it be expand their brand recognition, or maybe they launched a new product or service. There's really quite a few different ways that people can make their mark on their industry with their stakeholders to really deliver for their attendees. And I think that, making sure that is a curated experience and that it is discussed to figure out not only what the event organizer's goal is, but what is the exhibitor and sponsor? What is their goal? What is the desired outcome from their participation in this sponsorship opportunity or this event? And I think a lot of organizations and a lot of event organizers do it well. But I also think there's a lot of room for some organizations to really hone in on some of those discussions and dialogues to really leverage those opportunities for their stakeholders that they're hoping to help serve.
Yeah, I'm always interested into the psychology aspect of sponsorships. You attend a conference, in-person conference or an event, and maybe you do have an exhibit. It could be a tabletop, it could be an actual live exhibit. Maybe you're doing demonstrations, or you basically have a stand-up type of booth where you're just providing product information. The value with a sponsorship, I think, is showing, again, the connection within the event, but also, too, you're trying to create impressions in the attendees' minds and things like that. And you are a certified professional, and I'm sure there's a lot of information, education that you've received regarding to the psychology of sponsorship. So a question I would have for you when it comes to having an exhibit and a sponsorship, should companies consider doing both versus one over the other?
Absolutely. I think, both while there's pros and cons to both, I think, it really can help deliver the value of your company by offering both, because having an exhibit in an exhibit hall, or having a booth in an exhibit hall, provides people the opportunity to stop by, get some information about your company, maybe talk about a potential deal that might be coming up in the pipeline that you can work together. But I think a sponsorship really provides something that can be more tangible and impactful. And I think what we're also seeing right now, not only in terms of virtual and hybrid events, but also in-person events, is that we're trying to have that more engaging, impactful experience, especially as we emerge from COVID and are getting back to in-person events. Having that opportunity to really be a part of something and to have that memorable activity, that's really what's attracting people and is going to leave a lasting impression. It's not necessarily going to be that they, walked through an exhibit hall and saw your booth. I mean, it might be if your booth's enticing, and there's a lot that contractors like Shepherd or others can do to help you make sure that is an engaging experience. But really making sure what kind of memory and lasting impression are you wanting to live or to leave with your attendees, so they do remember you when they're making business decisions or purchasing decisions later on. I think, in the past 2.5 years, I don't think anybody's crystal ball would have predicted what we've seen and what we've all went through with the pivot to virtual. And lots of lessons learned. I know for the event planners that are joining us today, I know, or even, trade show professionals, marketing coordinators, folks that are working those trade shows, and they had to pivot to learning how to do a virtual exhibit, or what does a virtual sponsorship look like. I do think there were some silver linings that came out of the pandemic, and I realize that we're still in it. I know we're seeing ebbs and flows of transmission rates across the world still, so I'm by no means saying it's over. But as we are starting to get back to in-person events, we are seeing more folks take advantage of more active sponsorship ideas and how they can attract people either to their booth or to a particular sponsored session at the conference. And those lessons that are learned can be applied across all three event types. So, definitely lots out there to work with and how to weave it into the event experience. It's just really important to keep in mind that it's not a one-size-fits-all mentality, and that there really need to be considerations for the event type, as well as the target attendee or your target market that you're looking to engage with. And also thinking about how they're engaging with you and what the product is that you're trying to offer. I think the psychology, you touched on the psychology and the motivations behind it. I think as people participate now in virtual events or hybrid events, they have a much different expectation and what they're looking to get out of the experience now in June of 2022 while we're having this conversation versus what they expected in April of 2020. And I think it's really important for people to keep that in the front of mind and realizing that for any virtual or hybrid events, there really needs to be a well-executed strategy in place to make sure that it's a win-win for everybody, not only the attendees, but also the sponsors and exhibitors, as well as the show organizer themselves.
I recall from a time that you and I both worked for an association. Mm-hmm. And, part of your job and part of my job too, was really helping to find exhibitors and sponsors for the events that we were doing.
Right.
And some of the head trash that I would encounter, and I'm sure you probably encountered too, was that conferences were not future. The future for them looked a little not too good. But the greatest stress test that could happen to in-person conferences, was the pandemic. And the head trash, I'll call it head trash when people say that conferences are dying.
Right.
Conferences survived through the pandemic. they pivoted. They went to virtual events, then they went to hybrid events, and now we're seeing in-person events doing very well in conferences. The greatest stress test that the conferences industry could ever have was the pandemic and lockdown globally. And what we found, and what you probably can speak to more than I can, is that the industry is doing very well, and it still has a long life cycle to it of value, but also to making the difference when it comes to industries or delivering knowledge or education, or just a user experience when it comes to topics, and also new opportunities to understand markets and the global condition and things like that. What's your opinion, or what's industry opinion, on the state of conferences today in 2022?
Absolutely. So I think, your point about it being a stress test for the industry, and I know many of us spent many nights and weekends and whatever free moments we had to make sure that we were delivering successful events for our stakeholders. I think initially the discussion was positioned as that these virtual events or hybrid events were somewhat of a Band-Aid or a stopgap for what we were all facing as a global society. But I think we've realized over the last 6 months to a year that virtual and hybrid strategies are actually, they're here to stay. They're going to be woven into business plans from here on out, because I think, while we are seeing a huge demand for in-person events as we're coming back, I know all of the shows that Shepherd is producing with all of our valued clients, we're seeing their attendance numbers really, at pre-pandemic levels. So that's really promising and exciting. But we are seeing quite a few of our clients that are also continuing to offer hybrid options, or they're doing content capture on site for the sessions that are taking place, and then they're repackaging it and bundling it to sell post-conference, so that can be enduring learning materials that maybe for the folks that couldn't attend. Or maybe it's a bundled package that you can buy the in-person experience, but then you can also purchase the recording for an additional fee, because we can all only be in one room at one time. So having those recordings is really beneficial to be able to go ahead and leverage that content moving forward after the event concludes. And with all of those ideas that I just mentioned, sponsorships can be tied into almost every single one of them. Whether it be about sponsoring a track or sessions that may be aligned to a company's, practice area or whatever the industry is that they serve. There's obviously some networking opportunities that can be done obviously in person. I know that was one of the main concerns from exhibitors and sponsors when I was on the association side of things, and we had to pivot, was making sure that they don't lose that connection with their customer. And while we definitely had some lessons learned during the pandemic, and that it's hard to sometimes replicate those networking events that you have in an in-person environment to transition that to a virtual environment, there are ways that it can be done, and there are other more creative sponsorship opportunities that you can employ to still make sure that you're meeting the needs of your customer base, and more importantly, meeting the needs of your company and the goals that you're hoping to achieve as a sponsor. So as I was preparing for our conversation this week, I was looking at some of my past notes and just reflecting on things that we've done in the past. And, I think one of the great things, and this doesn't have to be just virtual and hybrid, this can apply to the in-person as well, but there's really things that you can do before, during, and after to really leverage your exposure and to maximize the ROI on the investment that you've made for your participation in whatever event it may be. And, you might notice that I'll switch hats a little bit, because I'm thinking of it from both perspectives. So for those that are joining us as an event organizer, And for those that are joining us as a sponsor that participates in trade shows, I think it's important to have both perspectives and thinking how one approaches this. So before the event, even before the pandemic, sponsored e-blasts or social media posts and those kind of things that are commonplace now. I think we saw that ramp up even more once the pandemic hit, and I think there's still a lot of value, especially for those industries and organizations where there's a large social media presence. There's a wide reach, encouraging folks to share or to comment and share their own story. The algorithms and the way that the analytics work in those social media platforms, that there'll be things, and Jim, I know this happens with you and I frequently. I'll see things that you comment or like on LinkedIn, and it might not even be to somebody that I personally know, but because I know you and we're connected, it pops up on my feed. So it's also thinking more holistically about that reach, that global reach, and how it's not even necessarily just your circle of influence, but think about it exponentially, kind of the 6 degrees of separation, and how the world's all connected. I think that really holds true for event marketing and really leveraging exposure for participating in events. I've done a lot of talking, so I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but I know with social media also, especially with LinkedIn, Facebook, I think even Twitter. I'll admit I'm not as well versed with Twitter. I need to be, but sponsored targeting ads. There's keyword searches and things that you can set up, that it'll if somebody searches for. I don't want to target just any one particular industry. For the sake of argument, let's go ahead and use an example from our former organization. If somebody is looking for information about coatings or corrosion, the idea would be to have sponsored targeted ads that can either be targeted by geography, keyword search type. There's a lot of different ways that you can have geo-targeting or what they would refer to as geofencing or targeted ads that can really bring value. And, it's really fascinating. I admit I need to learn even more about analytics and how targeted ads work. But there's definitely tremendous value. So if you're an organization that's not currently using that, I highly recommend to look into sponsored ads and targeted ads and how that can help you expand your reach for the industry that you're in. And also, sponsored articles or even just writing thought pieces. Anybody with a LinkedIn account can write a blog post or a kind of a op-ed piece, if you will, on various things. And I know there's many event organizers and associations that are always looking for subject matter experts to share their thoughts and ideas, to really help bring awareness and visibility to their event. But then as the sponsor or exhibitor, you're then also expanding your platform because you're getting the word out about your product or service. So lots of options, and that can all occur for months leading up to an event before you even participate. So I think that's a huge opportunity. More people are doing it, but I think there's a lot more room for that growth. I don't think people are taking advantage of it as much as they could.
Yeah, a bad practice that I encountered in my past was that, okay, we're going to exhibit at this conference. Okay, we pay for a booth, maybe we do a sponsorship, but there's no pre-planning going into that other than who's going to staff it, what we're going to wear, what are we going to do with leads after we get it. And it becomes a little bit too analog and static. In today's day and age, a lot of due diligence needs to go into qualifying the event. It's either you're going to qualify it the in-person, the hybrid, or the virtual, all the same. You want to qualify it. Does it make sense to participate? What's our participation going to look like?
Right.
For me, the best value is exhibiting, having speakers that would go in and basically talk about information or technology.
Right.
And then also sponsorship, because you want to make sure that you get that content information, you get the name recognition, the brand recognition, you capture the mind share of the attendee, and hopefully that helps get engagement. So you want to start looking at really planning out something with best practices and have value of it going into it. Like you said, you can start promoting a conference that you're going to be at maybe a half a year ahead of time. Or in some, hey, we'll see you next year.
Right.
And that is a great way to, again, help get the mind share and have the brand recognition, name recognition, and things like that. So what I always like to see, and I love where you're taking our conversation. You're taking us down the path of talking about before the event, during the event, and then post-event when it comes to sponsorship. And I like that's where you're heading to. So like you mentioned, sponsored content, email blast, hosting chats prior to the conference,
Right.
ads, targeted ads. Anyone who goes on any social media platforms, if you're following a particular industry or influencers that are in certain industries, through Google Analytics or whatever type of ad buys that a conference or an event does, you're going to have sometimes pop-ups that come up. And I
Right.
get those all the time. Attend this event or attend this conference or we're exhibiting at this event. And that adds a lot of value as well. So
Absolutely.
when we're looking at sponsorships related to the event, and I'm talking about now we've moved from prior to it starting, now
Sure.
we're at the beginning of the event, it's day one. What are some of the sponsorships that can be done with picking up badges,
Sure.
picking up the bags and things like that, and then even also too before the exhibit opens or during the exhibits? What are some of the sponsorships or the technical program? What are some of the sponsorships that you would recommend?
Sure. So I think, right out the gate, and obviously there's some variation between virtual, hybrid, and in person, depending
Yeah.
on which delivery method the event is using. But I think it's really important for folks to realize that the opportunity that exists with the tech that is available to you. And it doesn't have to be some large investment or a huge investment that's going to break the bank. There is a lot of uh, kind of basic technology out there that can really help expand your reach and that exposure. And whether that be with websites and mobile apps or different virtual event platforms that you're using, I think it's just as important for the show organizer or the event planner to be thinking about how that plays into the overall experience and partnership with a sponsor or exhibitor. But it's also important for that sponsor or exhibitor to be asking, how can I leverage the technology that's out there? That it's not going to be just all coming to you. There does need to be some legwork done to make sure that you're expanding your reach. But and I sorry, I'll probably bounce around a little bit because there are some little quirks and nuances between the three different types. But I think, so during the event, as you're arriving on site, I mean, there are countless opportunities, and I would encourage event organizers to work with their general contractor that they're working to put on the event with, of what kind of sponsorship opportunities are there in terms of brand recognition, signage on site, directionals, floor decals. I mean, the opportunities are limitless when you walk into a space and think about what can be branded and how that can really help expose your sponsors or maximize their exposure to their customer base. But I think, with virtual and even with hybrid, I think there's some unique opportunities, because what we really uncovered as one of the things coming out of the pandemic, or really during the pandemic, is that with these virtual events, you can tap into a target audience that has maybe never even attended your in-person event before, especially for larger international associations or organizations and trade shows where maybe folks were not able to come to the event because maybe it's cost prohibitive to travel internationally, or visa concerns and things of that nature. And now we're still faced with travel concerns for, vaccinations or negative test results and things to be able to attend in person. Having that virtual or hybrid opportunity is, you're not necessarily losing people from that in-person event. You're potentially expanding your audience, because there are folks that want to have that in-person event experience. They're going to be there. And I mean, we're seeing that in the numbers in terms of how many people are attending. But what the virtual and hybrid are offering is the opportunity to tap into that market that they weren't going to be at the in-person event anyway. So now you help capture a target audience. But how do you make sure that they feel included? How is your event inclusive? And it's not that the attendee that's joining via the computer is an afterthought. You want to make sure that they're felt, that they feel valued and that they feel heard, and that they're a part of the experience just as much as the person that's sitting in that room at the convention center. So some of the things that we've seen and that I know in my past role that we did with some sponsorships was, we created some exclusivity around it, because just because it's virtual doesn't mean it's unlimited. There's definitely some value in making sure that there are, a finite amount of opportunities for sponsors to take advantage of, because there's value in exclusivity for them as well, because they don't want to be one of 100 virtual sponsors. So, approaching it with bundles or packaged ideas or tiers, that could be a whole nother live stream to get into those details. But being able to come up with something like a swag bag. I know we had a finite amount of, I believe we did like 500 boxes of items that various sponsors could contribute to in the box. We packaged them and sent them out to the first 500 attendees for the virtual event. So, it might be the swag and the items that you would traditionally give at a booth in person in an exhibit hall. Well, we were able to still, deliver that pseudo experience by, sending it to your home. We're also seeing folks that are taking advantage of things like doing, happy hours still virtually. At the end of the day, there might be targeted rooms with moderators, and that could be sponsored. And that could be sponsored in terms of branding in the platform, branding in the emails leading up to it, branding in the emails following up saying thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. There's really a lot of different opportunities in terms of intro slides or promotional videos. I know some event organizers need to be a bit careful about that because of continuing education requirements and issues with commercialism and things like that. But, with doing a little bit of legwork and knowing what is or is not acceptable in your industry, there's really a wide variety of options on how you can engage with folks in that virtual or hybrid environment. It's just really important to go at it with intention and making sure that they are just as important in that event experience that you're curating as much as the person that's there in person as well.
Yeah, I've been so interested in with the hybrid because, to your point, getting travel visas, even the expense currently, we're all facing inflation. That could limit people trying to get approval to go to an in-person conference. Sure. And when you look at a hybrid, it does give an opportunity for you to capture. Now, the experience is going to be different. And I'm not saying as a hybrid attendee that you're going to have a terrible experience. What I'm saying is it's not the same as an in-person. And I think you had stressed that where an in-person, there's going to be a lot of attendees that want to do it because, again, they're looking at the opportunity for open networking, a little bit more fluid when it comes to their experience. With the hybrid, it's going to be pretty much kind of mapped out, scheduled out for them. And the one thing that you had talked about with the virtual happy hour, I actually got to see a virtual happy hour where they send you a drink kit. Now they tell you what alcohol to have,
Right. Right.
because as a responsible adult, you don't want to be. I don't even think you're able to send alcohol in the mail. But
Right.
what you wanted to do is, they send a kit to those participants, and again, it's branded, it's sponsored, it's branded, so it's brought to you by ABC Company. And those are great ways, and people remember that. Remember their virtual happy hour. So I'm always interested in with the hybrids and how they can really help benefit the in-person, but also tie in those attendees who are not for travel or for whatever reason, they're not going to be able to attend it in person. So that coming out of the pandemic, I think that was a positive move for the industry, the conferences industry and events industry, to be able to do that. Virtual events, they have everyone I've participated in, both as a technical speaker or an attendee. They seem to have done very well during the past 2 years, and they still have a lot of life to them today. So again, depending on what type of industry you're in, maybe a virtual event or a conference is what you want to continue with. My preference right now, I really like the hybrids, and I'm sure you're seeing a lot of that in your current work.
Yeah, I think we definitely are seeing a lot of the hybrid as we're getting back to in person. Like I said, I think we're going to see hybrid stick around. I don't think this was just a temporary solution. I think people have found the value in it. But to touch on one of the points you just made a few minutes ago is with the virtual experience and the drink kit and the happy hour. I love that because it's not only going to have that memorable experience. Maybe it's a drink that you've never tried before, and now it could be a new favorite, or it's a good, a good conversation piece that you can kind of pass along, or it can even have the potential to form, kind of unintended or unintentional friendships or bonds that, oh yeah, we made that drink on that happy hour, when you end up seeing them in person in the future. I think for organizers, it's really important to keep in mind that with these virtual and hybrid event experiences, you don't have as much control over how much time an attendee spends in your event. I mean, when you're in a convention center or when you're in a hotel, I know you could still lose folks to check their email or take a call, or they might go up to their room to catch up on some work. But you're more inclined or more likely to have those folks stay with you during the event, where when somebody's at their home or office, they've got family commitments, professional commitments, things kind of pulling them away and distractions. It's really important to make sure that experience that you're delivering to them is really important. And I think making sure that reflecting on the content that you're offering, and again, content can be tied back into sponsorship opportunities, that it can be a sponsored talk. It could be, maybe if it's for a hybrid, since, you mentioned that you're really a fan of hybrid right now, you might be able to, develop a theater in your exhibit hall where people are coming in person and they are listening to your sessions. It could be sponsored. They could also be regular sessions as well. But it could be live streaming, similar to how you and I are today. There's technology out there to live stream those. So, there could be in-person attendees, while there could be somebody joining from another part in the world. It might be 2 a.m. for them, and they're just staying up to hear what the conversation is. Just really making sure that those experiences are curated and that it is not a one-size-fits-all, because just because it goes well in person does not necessarily mean that's going to translate well to a virtual environment. So don't feel the need to have a one-to-one experience for everything, because it could end up actually hurting the overall experience if the experience is subpar or not of high quality. So just really being intentional with the planning for that.
Yeah, I think working in partnership with the conference organizers,
Right.
especially when it comes to how you're going to approach a conference,
Right.
it doesn't matter how it's offered. The other thing too is you as a marketing person, when you're trying to represent your company and put your company out there so that people can, again, the impressions, the recognition, taking the leadership role, you got to have a good strategy. And we talked about prior to the event, during the event, and now we're going to be moving into the post event. And I think one thing you talked about earlier, and for me, I'm a content is king person.
Sure.
And it doesn't matter if it's a in-person, hybrid, or virtual conference. Most of conferences and events today, typically when it comes to sometimes the technical theaters or certain sessions, they are videotaped. I said videotape, I'm showing my age. They're recorded, right? They're
Right.
recorded. So the recording gives you a couple options. You have video and you have audio.
Right.
So now you can actually, if you are a sponsor of a session, and part of the sponsorship is that you're going to be able to utilize that content from the session that you sponsored. Now you can clip that out, you can package it, and you can go ahead back out and re-promote that. So we need to think as companies when we're exhibiting and we're sponsoring is think of the longer term value after the event of how we can sponsor certain things and use that to help benefit us when it comes to messaging, brand awareness, capturing engagement or mind share. Those are very important ways. And could you cover some of these sponsorships that can be done after events and conferences?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to your point about things being recorded, sorry, I know this is going back a little bit to the actual live event, but it ties into that post event is having that exposure of, it can be the introductory message to the start of a session, or maybe peppered throughout the presentation for the day. There might be sponsored commercials, or maybe there's, maybe your sessions are introduced by a rep from a certain company. Again, I know every industry is different, and sometimes, having that level of involvement might not be welcome in an education setting. But there's also opportunities for the softer skill type sessions, or maybe it's, the awards components of the event that you can incorporate some of that sponsorship opportunity. One other piece before we move on to the post event, I actually I'm no way tied or connected to what I'm about to plug, but I just attended a webinar yesterday put on by MeetingsNet. Again, no affiliation, no endorsement, but it was really great. They had somebody from Grubhub, which I know most people know what Grubhub is, food delivery service. And they had a really great overview on how you can still have an experience for that virtual or hybrid attendee attending from their home by giving them the opportunity to get some sort of food and beverage spend. And there's a couple of different ways you could set up a corporate account for that. But there's a way that you can sponsor that. It can be sponsored in the promotional emails. And, if there was going to be a lunch and learn session that you were going to do at your in-person event, you can make sure that person has that Grubhub ordering code in advance. They can order their lunch, and they're participating in the lunch and learn, just as everybody else that walked into that session in your conference room. So there really are a lot of unique outside the box things that we're starting to see come out that can really help cater to both audiences. But so after the event, again, I would say there are just as many opportunities for after the event sponsorships as there are before or during. Obviously, email blasts and media posts, again, there could be an opportunity for spotlight articles. So, writing something specific about your product or service, or maybe a recap of the event. Maybe I know in some instances we've had companies where they've launched a product at the conference. So then there's some buzz and excitement in the industry, for weeks or months after, because this is a new technology that's just emerging, and there's excitement still around it. So there's opportunities for sponsorship there to help increase that visibility. Sponsored chats, I know, and this again could be before, during, or after, but I've seen a few organizations that have done sponsored chats in the sense where a subject matter expert would be available, maybe it'd be on the last day, or it could be a week or two later, thinking to that idea of the learning principles and things that tie into retention of information, letting somebody go back into the workplace and then a couple weeks later revisit it to say, let's have a conversation about some of those points that were discussed at, the ABC conference or the XYZ topic. And that's just another opportunity for exposure. And I'd encourage event organizers that if they don't have those post-event sponsorship opportunities really offered in their prospectus, it's something I really encourage them and their teams to sit down and think about. How can they start doing that? Because that's definitely leaving an opportunity on the table that they might be surprised that I think some of their sponsors would be interested in. So
yeah.
So I think that would really be helpful. And then really one of the biggest things, and I think this happened even before COVID, I know it happened before COVID because I had done it in several of my roles, is sponsoring that on-demand content. I mean, that's enduring material that some organizations leave it up for, 60, 90 days, maybe 6 months or a year, or there might be some organizations that leave it indefinitely. So just thinking about how that exposure goes beyond that finite event of the 2, 3, or 5 day event, you could be in front of folks, in front of your target audience or market segment that you're looking at for a year from when you originally were involved in the event. So again, leveraging that investment for the longer term, for a more like 365-day approach rather than just that finite event.
Yeah, one other, this was explained to me as it was a post-event sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
Not in my current industry, different industry, global industry, where a large conference that was held, and a company who produces a podcast. And what they did, they sponsored not subject matter experts. These were executives in the industry where they actually had a panel discussion. They formatted it in a way of it's going to be a series release of different podcast episodes. Right. They recorded it as video and audio, offered it as both ways. And then what they did, they started to hype it up as a post-event, and then were able to stretch that out over I believe it was a 3 or 4 month period where they would drop every week short segments of it and then cover different topics. But they were actually talking where the sponsorship would include these CEOs and executives to be part of the panel. They were able to pull a panel together through this sponsorship. Sure. And it really kind of helped that company, in my mind, to show, again, against the competition, look who we're talking or who's talking with us. The other thing is it showed the leadership position within that particular industry, because their customers could say, hey, they're working with other entities that are just like us. We should be working with them too. So there's so many different ways post-event, and with content too, that can be really utilized for different types of sponsorships.
Absolutely. It helps make that connection for learning, and maybe it's pairing or partnering stakeholders that you wouldn't have even initially thought of as being partners or collaborators together. So with the example you just gave about the podcast, did they record those podcasts on site at the live conference? Or
yes.
Was that something completely separate?
It was a session held, and the reason why they said that it was a benefit for them, because these executives wanted to be in front of the attendees to showcase what their companies were doing in the industry. and it
Sure.
was a great opportunity. And it was basically roughly about an hour session, and they
Sure.
were able to cut it up into 15, 20 minute, however they did it, segments. But
Right.
the way the topics were laid out for this basically couch discussion, with the moderator being the podcast host, was that they made sure that they stayed within certain topics and certain time frames to be able to offer that as a series of episodes that rolled into the conference discussion that they had. So it was
Yeah.
a really neat way of providing extra value, but again, they were getting some really high value interviews or guests to be able to interview, and it really helped
Right.
their yeah.
And that podcast or that, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm
No, you're good.
excited because I'm agreeing with you of that,
Yeah.
that is something that we are seeing more and more, because now also that content that was recorded, it doesn't even have a shelf life of just a year. I mean, if for some of the organizations that might have a Google Play or Apple Store, you know, channel or outlet that they're delivering information to, I mean, it could be available indefinitely. So that kind of exposure is really providing value that I think one of the challenging things is it's sometimes hard to quantify, because you don't know how many people in the next 1, 2, 3 years is going to view it. I'd venture to say with a well curated calendar, a promotional calendar that might include email and social media posts and things, it can really extend the shelf life of that content. And to your point about recording the podcast at the in-person event, we are starting to really see that as a increasing trend with clients that Shepherd is working with, is that they're creating these kind of showcases of kind of these closed in for great audio, but like plexiglass walled structures. So there is creating a buzz and excitement on site at the event. Like, what's going on over here? Like, I want to listen in.
Yeah.
Some groups have done it where there's kind of a little seating area with speakers so you can hear the conversation. Others might just have a promotional sign that is saying, subscribe to our channel to hear these great talks after the event concludes. So kind of creating this FOMO, this fear of missing out of, what are they talking about? That's Jim. I need to talk. What has Jim got to say? So, having that mystery can also help drive folks as well to lead to something after the event concludes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
The downside, I wouldn't call it a downside. The one concern with it was that when it came to the releases from these executives,
Sure.
their their company legals had to get involved. So the way they had to structure this podcast was that they can't utilize that executive to make it look like they're endorsing their product, service, or company. The other thing is it cannot be used in promotional material saying, you should buy our product. Here's what, John Doe says about whatever.
Sure.
So there is a lot of the legality that's got to go into it with the content when it comes to the release and everything like that, and in the use of the content. That being said, it's something that still should be approached, but it just takes a lot of planning involved in thinking about what things might need to be addressed, covered, and then how things are going to roll out. But it gives you a lot of content life, either through clips or again through a podcast release or videos, because again you're going to capture it in at least two types of media. It'd be a video and audio,
Right.
but not on videotape.
Right. And I think, one of the things you were mentioning about not using it for promotional purposes and that there's some legalities, obviously, case by case basis, everyone, there's not a one size fits all. Everyone needs to approach their industry and their organization accordingly. But I think one of the key pieces for an exhibitor or sponsor to think about, and a show organizer should be posing these questions right out the gate, is how to make that product or that discussion, let's not even make it about a product, make it about a industry topic. How do we make it about what was the industry's problem or need and what kind of research was done. I mean, taking the user or attendee in this instance, take them on a journey. They don't want to necessarily be sold on something. I mean, everyone that attends a trade show or a conference and they're hearing from folks that work for a company that makes a certain product, they know there's a sales element to it. You don't need to always be as forthcoming, infomercial type sales pitch. I think what research has been done, what's coming down the pipeline in the industry, attendees and your target audience are going to find value in that discussion, and it's going to spark curiosity. And that curiosity is most likely going to drive that individual to look into your organization, look into this particular technology or emerging topic. So I really think making sure that there is a story with intention into, and I realize this is a little bit off sponsorship, this is more about content delivery, but you mentioned content being king. And I think, really being able to effectively tell a story and what value your organization or your technology is bringing, that can be packaged into a sponsorship in a variety of different ways. But having that overall satisfaction for the attendee, for the sponsor that actually participated in it, and really for the organizer, it really can be a win-win for all stakeholders involved with the appropriate preparation and time spent to really curate that experience.
Yeah, that's what it really comes down to. You got to have an effective plan, and you have to stick to that plan and work that plan. Jacob, what an awesome conversation regarding this topic. A lot of great ideas when it comes to sponsorships.
Yes.
In closing out our episode, is there anything that we did not talk about related to sponsorship ideas that you would want to leave with the viewers?
Yeah, so I think, and this was kind of woven in throughout, but I think as we get back to in-person events, the last 2.5 years has really transformed how people live, work, and play. And they've really reassessed or they've paused to say, how am I going to spend my time and money to participate in an event? And if they're going to spend time and money away from their family, away from their office, and they're going to attend either, whether it be a hybrid or an in-person event, it's really important to make sure that you're delivering a value add experience for folks. And, making sure that we're delivering events and offering opportunities that are going to be engaging and impactful. I would encourage for any of those trade show participants that are either with us right now or they might watch the replay later on, that reach out to your show organizers, reach out to the event planner at the association or trade show, whichever the entity is that you're working with, and ask them or tell them rather, this is the goal of our participation. This is how we want to succeed, or this is what we would define as being successful by participating in your event. How can you help me achieve those goals? And I think that really helps position the argument, not an argument, but positions the dialogue to really to lay it out. Here's our baseline, here's what our desired end goal is, and then working together as a collaborator or as a team to help achieve those goals really will be a win-win for everybody. And myself and my team and everybody at Shepherd, I know it's a little bit of a shameless plug, but providing value add is one of the most rewarding aspects of working in the events industry. So really looking at folks as collaborators and partners, more than just having it be transactional. Our philosophy or our mission is that our success or your success is our success. So, really viewing it as a partnership and collaborating. I think anybody working in the trade show industry, whether you're a planner or an exhibitor and sponsor or a general contractor, everybody wants an event to be successful. So just don't shy away from having that dialogue with your key stakeholders to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck.
Perfect. So if everyone wants to have a perfect conference experience, this is Jacob's contact information, and also for Shepherd's website. So is there, do you have any other social media, Jacob, that you want to promote?
I need to get better with it. I need to. It's finding the time. I want to make sure I do it well and curate it well. So the best way to get in touch with me is, as Jim had it on the screen, my email, and then also the QR code is my LinkedIn information. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jacob Adams Morales with Shepherd. And if you can't find me, I know I'm listed under the employees or people on Shepherd Exposition Services. If you find us there, you should be able to find me. So we'd be happy to hear from folks, and would love to help create some really memorable trade show experiences.
Excellent, excellent. So for everyone, next Wednesday's broadcast is going to be on marketing using social media memes.
Ooh.
Did you know that a lot of marketing that's really kind of up and coming is through memes? Did you know that, Jacob?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What, memes?
Yeah, utilizing existing memes and creating new memes, and utilizing that on or promoting it on social media platforms.
I'm gonna have to tune in, because see, learn something new every day.
All different ways. If you're looking to market yourself, there's all different ways.
Absolutely.
And we have Taylor says, great job, Jacob. I agree. Taylor,
thank you.
Very good job.
Well, Jim, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, and who knows what 6 months or a year from now, who knows, maybe we'll have a new topic to get back together and talk about trade shows and just curating a good experience for everyone involved. So I appreciate the opportunity and appreciate your time and everyone else's time who joined us today. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Yeah, I do look forward to that too, Jacob. Jacob, have a good rest of your day as well.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, everyone, have a great day, and make sure to stay tuned for next Wednesday's episode. And for the QR code and all the information, you can always watch the replay here on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and also on Facebook. Okay, everybody, have a great day.
I hope you found value with today's Build Out broadcast. Make sure you connect with Jim on LinkedIn and subscribe to his YouTube channel. This way you'll be notified on new live streams and when new content is released. Please give today's broadcast a like and share with your connections and colleagues. Thanks for watching, and please visit buildoutproductions.com for additional content and to join the mailing list so you can keep updated on other streams and quality content from the creators on the Build Out Productions team.